Good evening. Welcome to the Napoleon Memoirs. We've one job here, and that's to obsess about Napoleon. It's so nice to have little Wayne's World basement set so I can do this because I've been trying to talk to people about Napoleon my whole life. People are just like, why are you so interested in him? And then they tune me out. So, anyway, it's a fascinating topic to me. I hope I can convey to you why I find him so interesting. So, yesterday, we were hearing from Count Charles Tristan de Montfort from his memoirs how Napoleon was living the life, a life worse than the lowest barracks officer in Europe. His living conditions were horrendous, and no one could even live on Longwood. Many farms failed there. It couldn't support life, but it was covered with rats. So that's where they put Napoleon because that's how it works. They wanted to send a message that people should never try to stand up to English gold. Okay? It's all about terrorism and intimidation. And they do it all the time, constantly. And believe me, people, whether they realize it or not, get the message and then they become terrified and they don't stand up for themselves. And that's what we're seeing. We're just seeing such fear. And that's because we are frightened our entire lives. And this has been going on since at least the time of Napoleon. So it's very important to understand that the media and school and all these things around us are sending us messages to never challenge the bankers. Okay? Anyway, and that's why I'm shut down and all kinds of things are done to obscure me because I'm challenging the bankers. Okay? So let's continue. A short time after his establishment there, a portion of the ceiling of his bedroom having given way in consequence of rottenness, a quantity of foul water entered the breach and forced him to seek refuge in another chamber. This building had served as a cowhouse for some 50 years when Mr. Skelton conceived the idea of transforming it into a dwelling house for the season of the greatest heat. The operations were carried on by Negroes and sailors with a precipitation which rendered any degree of care impossible. They had contented themselves with carrying away the dung and had constructed the flooring of fir without changing the roof by simply nailing boards on planks of fir placed upon the clay sole of the cow house. Everything was completely rotten as they were turning to Jamestown. The emperor marked a modest cottage about a mile before arriving at the entrance of the valley. He expressed a desire to see it and to remain there some time. This cottage was inhabited by the family of Mr. Balcombe. The family was highly gratified at the honor done to them, expressed their pleasure in a cordial and lively manner, and offered to put their whole establishment at the emperor's disposal in case it should suit his views to remain at Briar's till Longwood should be ready to receive him. The emperor accepted this hospitable offer in part and said that he would willingly lodge in a pavilion detached from the principal dwelling house on condition that no difference should be made in the habits of the family. The admiral eagerly acquiesced in this arrangement, and in the same evening the pavilion, that is to say, a single room which it contained on the ground floor, received the furniture of Austerlitz. Two bedrooms made of boards nailed together under the roof served as a lodging for countless causes and the valets de chambre. The best idea of this pavilion may perhaps be obtained by recalling the dimensions of a billiard room in the neighborhood of Paris. Great was our astonishment when the Grand Marshal on his arrival informed us that the Emperor had stopped to dine with the family of Belcombe and intended remaining some time at Briars. Mr. Balcombe had two amiable daughters, Eliza Jane and Betsy. The latter especially was a charming girl, spoke French well. She was then about 12 or 13 years old. This necessary separation was a great disappointment to the rest of us. But regrets were useless. The Grand Marshal informed countless causes that he was expected to set off immediately for the Briars. Messieurs Marchot and Saint Denis were also sent thither. This is a very interesting episode in the life of Napoleon, where he found this beautiful spot that was very temperate. And he, as Montsalon says, he lives in this little room the size of a billiard room, and his Las Casas gets to stay with him. So Las Casas is like beyond thrilled. it's in it's in his memoirs. I can't believe he's alone with the emperor. He's so excited, and the other ones have to stay in town. And it's just Las Casas and his valets de chambre, and then the Balcombes have this wild daughter named Betsy, who she's insane, and she would wave a sword around at Napoleon, threatened to kill him. This is real. This really happened. And Napoleon, I guess he's such a strange person. He's so bored most of the time. He gave him a thrill, so he liked it actually. And everybody's like, "You can't treat Napoleon like that." She's like, "Watch me," and he allowed it. But that's the way Napoleon was. He was always looking for a thrill, so she gave it to him. Anyway, I tried reading her memoirs, but someone got a hold of it and started putting all this disinformation in it, so I had to like stop. But it was interesting. She was a very intelligent person, but it's very difficult to find memoirs from England that haven't been tampered with, and hers most certainly were. But I have a feeling she wrote some legit memoirs, and someone decided to sneak their little disinformation in. I couldn't take it because you can feel when the publicists come in and she's explaining, "Oh, actually, St. Helena is very healthy." She's not doing that. That's the spycraft crew at work. If you ask me, that's my opinion. I know how they work. They take the truth and then they slip their little information in, and that is their favorite way to get ideas into our heads. It was just too much of it. I couldn't take it, but she was interesting. Betsy, Betsy, Betsy. She's a very intriguing character. She's like 13 years old, and she has no respect for Napoleon whatsoever. And he gets a kick out of it. And she was so smart, and she could speak French well, and he liked kids. Anyway, they all tried to say he had something going with her, but he didn't. He didn't. Napoleon could control himself, believe it or not. So, Liz Kaz is in Italian. Let's see what we're gonna find here. It's always interesting. Anything with Napoleon's interesting to me. Obviously, he was fascinating. He was a study in contrasts. Let's see where I'm supposed to be. There it is. Okay, let's do some Italian. Non è Gio per questo, continuava egli, che io non abbia corsi più d'una volta gravissimi pericoli. Posso contare tra gli altri 30 e più congiuri autenticati da documenti portacerti, quali che rimasero ignoti passarono sotto silenzio, altri ne inventano. Io in cambio ho con ogni cura accottato tutti quelli che potei. Il pericolo fu sempre gravissimo per la mia vita, soprattutto tutto, cominciando da Marengo sino all'attentato di Georges e il fatto del Duca d'Enghien. Napoleone diceva che 8 giorni prima dell'arresto di Georges, uno dei più ardenti congiurati aviali consegnato in prima una supplica all'apparato, altri si introdussero a Saint-Cloud e dalla Malmaison in mezzo ai suoi domestici. Pareva infine che lo stesso Georges lì si fosse trovato molto da vicino e nello stesso appartamento. L'imperatore, indipendentemente dal suo destino, attribuisce la propria salvezza a certe circostanze tutti sui propri. A suo avviso che gli aveva principalmente giovato l'essere vissuto a capriccio e senza aver mai conservato regolari abitudini. Il suo vecchio lavoro trattenevalo nel suo gabinetto ed in casa non pranzava mai presso alcuno del rado recavasi al teatro. Ne compariva se non inatteso. E 2 attentati che lo esposero a maggior rischio vedecevelli indirizzandosi alla volta del giardino dopo finito. L'abbigliamento furono quelli dello scultore Ceracchi e del fanatico di Sean Broncheracchi. Con pochi forsenati aveva fermo la morte del primo console. Doveva simulare inalato che usciva dalla sua loggia al teatro. Il console, fatto consapevole, viando nulla ostante, passando coraggiosamente di fra quelli che erano stati più solleciti ad occupare i loro posti, ne furono arrestati che a mezzo verso la fine dello spettacolo c'era chi diceva l'imperatore aveva un giorno idolatrato il console, ma ne aveva giurato la morte, da che gli parve di non vedere in lui che un tiranno. Questo scultore era stato dal generale Bonaparte ricolmo di favori e piani, e seguito il busto, e si citava in quel momento con ogni mezzo possibile un'ultima seduta per un correzione ha detto su indispensabili per la perfezione del lavoro, sciolto dal suo destino, il consul non poté disporre di un solo istante e pensando fosse bisogno la vera cagione di si fervidi istanzi, fece che gli dare 6.000 franchi, ma si inchinava a partito. C'era chi non aveva altro intento che di pugnalarlo, allorché si fosse seduto. So English Gold obviously was constantly sending Napoleon assassins, and they're talking about just all of these assassination attempts, one after the other, and all the forms they take, because obviously if someone's enforcing the law, they have to be assassinated. And that's what Napoleon was, enforcing the law. And, there's this group that can't have that. So this is the whole story. Napoleon is constantly dealing with assassination attempts because, it's terrorism. Terrorism is they have to kill heroic people to keep the terrorism going. And it was to such a degree that they had a sculptor sent to him. The sculptor was going to kill him. I mean, it's like, it's how much, like, heroes are such a threat to English gold. They have to just constantly figure out how to, shut these people down, any threat to their power. That's how they stay in power. him and the sculptor who's going to kill him. This they brainwash people. There's this person, this religious fanatic. They love to twist religious fanatics and make them think that it would be a wonderful thing to kill leaders. This is a huge thing because it's if they can control the leaders, they can control everything, right? So they have to always control the leaders. And when Napoleon was in Vienna, this young man was just determined to kill him. And he's like, "You shouldn't want to kill me. I'm not a bad person. What's giving you this idea that you want to kill me?" And he's like, "The wars will end if I kill you." And he's like, "They're the ones starting all the wars. Why don't you go kill them?" And you're like, "Because it's you. You're the one." These brainwash people. So when you hear about all these lone shooters, and they're not lone shooters, they're brainwashed. Oh, look into it. They have people working on them to make them like that. And then they act like, oh, there's all these crazy people that are always trying to assassinate. And then you look into it, you find out that they were worked upon. Okay, so and you understand people who are a little unstable to begin with, and then they get their new friends who explain to them why it would be so wonderful to kill leaders. Yeah, and and then think about the school shootings, and then go look into those, right? Like the world is just full of people who want to shoot up schools. Learn about that. Okay, that doesn't make much sense. Like who's gonna do that? Like, oh, I'm angry, I'm gonna go shoot up a school. Does that make sense? And yet it supposedly happens all the time. See, that's terrorism, okay? And if you question anything about these stories, you're like the most horrible person. Why is that? Who's framing that? Why can't you question these stories? And there's so many of them. Anyway, so this is all terrorism. This is how terrorism works. They have to control the leaders and they have to control the media. And then they can brainwash everybody. That's how it works. It's brainwashing. And they just have to control the people on top. Okay, so it's time for Lavalette. He's busted out. Poor Emily is in jail now. And Lavalette has got all these aristocrats showing up, helping to bust him out. So it's a great moment because there's nobody who's more of a Bonapartist than Lavalette, and all these people are supporting him. So it's a great moment of unity. Even one of the biggest libelists of England, Robert Wilson, joins in on the act. It's really cool. Now, Robert Wilson, the English libelist Robert Wilson, found out after he wrote all those libels that he had been tricked and deceived into writing those libels and that information was not true. And guess what? When he found out that he was tricked and lied to and turned into a libelist, tricked into it, oh, guess what? He became a big fan of Napoleon. That's how it works, okay? When people find out that they've been tricked and lied to, they usually end up liking Napoleon. See, so it's so important that people don't find out that they've been tricked about Napoleon, because then they start to like him. And that is the case with Robert Wilson. And he got caught for helping to bust Lavalette out. So this is a great story where all kinds of people realize that they were wrong and they figure out who the bad guys really are. And it most certainly was not Napoleon and Lavalette. Not even close. And that is what this is all about. Changing minds, informing people, helping people understand who's on your side, who is not on your side, okay? And people who are defending their worst enemies they need to think about where those ideas are coming from, okay? Probably not coming from their own brains. Probably coming from someone else's brain. Anyway, so now Lavalette is about to knock on the door of the Duc de Richelieu, some kind of arch aristocrat. He's all nervous, okay? He doesn't know what he's doing. Emily came up with this whole plan for him. And he can only hide, basically, with aristocrats because anyone who's a friend of his, they're going to go look for them. So all these aristocrats are protecting him. Monsieur Badu entra le premier, et pendant qu'il parlait au Suisse, qui avait la tête hors de sa loge, J'ai passé rapidement. Où va cet homme? S'écria-t-il. C'est mon domicile. J'ai gagné l'escalier jusqu'au 13e étage. J'arrivais à l'endroit qui m'avait été indiqué. À peine y étais-je qui entendit l'effrasement d'une robe d'étoffe. Je me sentis prendre doucement par les bras. On me poussa dans une chambre. La porte fut fermée sur moi. Je pensais vers une poêle allumée et qui jetait une lueur forte incertaine en plaçant mes mains sur le poêle pour me chauffer. J'ai trouvé un flambeau et un paquet d'allumettes. J'ai compris que je pouvais éclairer la chambre à l'aide d'une bougie. J'ai examiné mon nouveau domicile. C'était une chambre de médiocre grandeur à mansarde. Un lit fort propre, une commode, des chaises, les petites poêles de faïence. Sur la commode était un papier sur lequel j'ai trouvé écrit point de bruit. N'ouvrez la fenêtre que la nuit. Chaussez-vous des pantoufles. Lisière attendait avec patience. À côté de ce papier était une bouteille d'excellent vin de Bordeaux. Plusieurs volumes de Molière et de Rabelais et un joli panier qui renfermait des éponges, des savons parfumés, de la pâte de ronde et tous les petits instruments d'une toilette soignée. Ces attentions délicates et la jolie écriture de billets m'indiquaient de l'autre qui joignant au plus généreux sentiment des mœurs élégantes et du bon goût. Mais pourquoi l'hôtel des affaires étrangères? Je n'avais jamais vu le docteur Richelieu. Monsieur Valdieu était, il est vrai, attaché à un département, mais d'une manière fort indirecte. Je ne pouvais inspirer aucun intérêt au roi. D'ailleurs, il eût été si simple d'accorder la grâce. Si j'étais là-bas, la volonté du ministre, pourquoi violer des devoirs sacrés de mon Dieu? La loyauté qui devait à son souverain s'associer au parti de Bonaparte est un criminel. L'État condamné comme conspirateur. So he knocks on the door of the Duc de Richelieu, some big guy in the new government. And then he's like, hey, who's that? And they're like, oh, it's just a servant. Lionel runs by, runs upstairs. And it's all dark. And they let him into this little room in a garret. And the first thing he sees are these matches. And he knows to light the candle. And he looks around. There's like a note. It says, don't open the window except at night. And there's like this beautiful, like pate laid out. Everything's so beautiful. And there's like fine soaps and everything. So he's in this very elegant setting. He doesn't know who's helping him. It's really beautiful. And he's hiding behind this hotel of the Duc de Richelieu. So no one's ever going to expect him there. Anyway, that's how far I've gone. It's really touching, but anyway, why does it have to be this way? You know? Because it just doesn't stop, you know? Why do we always have to hide from these people? And why can't we unite and look out for ourselves? I mean, I ask myself this all the time. Why do we have to live like this, you know, in fear of terrorists who own everything? Why do we have to live in a planet that's owned by someone else? Anyway, maybe one day we'll learn how to stand up for ourselves and respect ourselves and learn how to enforce our own laws and respect our leaders, our real leaders, you know, not the people that lie to us and trick us, but the people who really do care about us. Wouldn't that be incredible? I dream of that day. I hope you will too. I think if we all dream of that day, it's going to come. Some people may think I'm a dreamer, but what else can I do? I'm stuck here for now, right? Why don't you dream with me? You're stuck here too, right? Let's make the best of it. No reason to be so afraid. Okay. All right, so you're going to go on and on about poison in Spanish. Okay. And why so much poisoning? Why so much need to kill people and then pretend it's natural causes? Who's behind that? What kind of people think like that? Do you think like that? I don't. Do you think, oh, how can I kill somebody and make it look natural causes? See, there are people in this world that focus on that kind of thing. Okay. And we've seen a lot of them in the last 2 years. Okay. Introducción. Hay razones para creer que Napoleón en Fontainebleau, el 13 de abril de 1814, tuvo el propósito, después de su abdicación, de retirarse definitivamente de la escena política. Hubiese consagrado el resto de su vida al desarrollo material y espiritual de su pequeño principado de Alba. Algunos de sus proyectos tendían, según parece, a convertir la isla en un centro de investigaciones científicas, lo que exigía medios financieros suficientes. Estos quedaban asegurados por el Tratado de Fontainebleau, que fijaba en 2 millones por año la asignación que debían recibir Napoleón y su familia. Pero no se entregó ni un céntimo y los bienes personales del emperador quedaron bajo secuestro. El gobierno francés no cumplía los compromisos contraídos en el tratado. Además, preparaba con sus aliados la deportación de Napoleón a Santa Elena, de acuerdo con una propuesta de Wellington, el agente de Napoleón, en el Congreso de Viena. Cipriani se enteró de ciertas conversaciones según las cuales el emperador no gozaría por mucho tiempo el descanso de que disfrutaba en la isla de Elba. Se hacían preparativos para enviarle a la isla africana. Hudson Lowe, el gobernador inglés de Santa Elena, ha confirmado este hecho, el hecho de que se separará a Napoleón de su esposa y que se le dejara sin noticias tanto de ella como de su hijo, contribuyó a Napoleón comprenderá que sus adversarios nunca se ceñirían el tratado de Fontainebleau. Por otra parte, el nuevo régimen impuesto a los franceses por las bayonetas extranjeras no había tenido tiempo de enraizarse en el espíritu del pueblo. Aún había posibilidad de restablecer el imperio. Después de la estancia de unos 10 meses en la isla de Elba, Napoleón se decidió, con un ejército compuesto por unos centenares de hombres, hizo velas hacia Francia, donde desembarcó en el Golfo Juan el 1 de marzo de 1815. 3 semanas más tarde, Francia estaba de nuevo a sus pies. La marcha hasta París fue triunfal cuando, después de la batalla de Waterloo, el emperador se retiró por segunda vez el 22 de junio de 1815 y abdicó en favor de su hijo. Por ese sacrificio patriótico, las oficinas de las dos cámaras expresaron el agradecimiento de los diputados y de los pares. Para sí solo había reclamado el derecho de emigrar a América y de instalarse ahí durante el resto de su vida. This is very important, okay? Napoleon signs all these treaties throughout his career, and the other side just ignores them, okay? Okay, so these are contracts that were done in very bad faith. Okay, so Napoleon is told, if you abdicate we're going to do certain things for your family. We're going to do certain things for you. We're going to let you live in Elba. So why don't you abdicate? So he abdicates. And then they cart him off to Elba, and then they don't do anything they said they were going to do because these people have no honor or self-respect. They don't, the truth means nothing to them. How do we know? They don't honor their own treaties throughout this entire story. So, I mean, this is very important thing to realize. So in this book, they're saying Napoleon wanted to establish like a research institute for sciences. And there's reason to believe that. Napoleon's fascinated by science, and he was so brilliant. Anyway, so, Hortense, his stepdaughter, was back in Paris, really worried that they weren't going to do anything that they said they were going to do for Napoleon. They weren't going to send him any of the money that they said that they were going to send him. And he was going to have no way to protect himself when Europe combined was after him. And Wellington, who always followed around any woman who had anything to do with Napoleon, that's a historical fact, by the way, he's following Napoleon's stepdaughter around because that's what Wellington did. He was weird. Okay. Anyway, so he's like, hey, Hortense, I want to meet you. I want to be around you because you have something to do with Napoleon. He's obviously had a whole thing with Napoleon. Okay. And she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. You can come over. I'm going to talk to you about this treaty. So she talks about it in her memoirs. It was like when Wellington came over. And she wasn't too impressed. But she said, it would be really great for, the honor of England if you guys could actually do something to fulfill the terms of this treaty. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. And the next day, they show up at her house saying they're going to take everything from her and everyone in the Bonaparte family. So what happened? Did Wellington bring it up? And then they said, oh, well, while we're thinking about it, not only are we not going to fulfill the treaty, let's just steal everything from them because it's criminals. We're dealing with a criminal dynasty. That's why they always have to shut down law enforcement, which is what Napoleon represented. After all, his greatest achievement was the civil code. He was a lawmaker. He was an incredible lawmaker. Anyway, so she's so scared for Napoleon. She knows that they're setting him up, and they're not just going to let him live in Elba. And Napoleon hears that it's their plan. They're talking about sending him to St. Helena. Okay, so they're about to come and catch him. And that's when he comes back to France. He didn't really have that many options. He knew they were going to come and send him to St. Helena at that point. So he said, well, I might as well roll the dice. And then he took over France so easily because the people actually loved him. And they didn't want to live under an English gold occupation puppet government that was being forced on them. This is, they can see when it's foreign troops forcing leaders on them that they don't want, okay? This whole thing is about sovereignty. You can have a king that you want, and that's sovereignty. It's not about democracy. It's, do the people really want that leader? And the sad truth is Louis XVI, the king that they executed during the reign of terror, the people liked him. He was a good king, actually. So this group comes in and kills kings that people actually like and want, because once they kill the king, they can move in and get their crime empire going. Okay, this is secret societies and how they operate. Look into it. These are historical facts. They want to act like this is all a Loch Ness monster up in Scotland. It's not. This is how it is. Anyway, yeah, this is not a Loch Ness monster situation. This is a accurate, factual, historical situation. The secret societies are they're plotting against us. I mean, Yale. Let's talk about Yale. A lot of it comes from Yale. So We got to start talking about this stuff, get real about it, because it's our lives and it's unacceptable. Criminals should be running everything. They shouldn't have shut down the legal system. They shouldn't be doing satanic rituals like 9/11. Yeah. Okay. We have every evidence that those buildings were full of explosives. The whole thing, if you look at it, it's all coded. It's got numerology all over it. If you start to find out what a ritual is like, you know that that has a ritual fingerprints all over it. So we're being told it's a wonderful pretext for a 20-year war against countries who knows where, but it's really not. It's really secret societies doing their thing. Look it up. Look it up. The facts are the facts. All right, so I'm going to go into German. We love the German. Yeah, we actually at this point like the Factor because it's so cool. I like Factor. I just couldn't read it. All right, so Napoleon likes his musicians, as we know. Grassini, Napoleon, you know, he liked his actresses and his musicians. That's also a historical fact. But what can we do? All right, let's go. Knock down der Kaiser, Berthier. Im Verlauf der Seite mit Rechtsrummern und Ehrenbezeugungen überhaupt hatte, so verdachte er in Uferfabriken auch sicher so verheiraten. Berthier widerstand beständig, nur Madame Visconti konnte ihn, wie er sagte, glücklich machen. Indessen war eine Herzogin von Bayern nach Paris in der Hoffnung gekommen, dort den Kaiser sagte zu werden. Der Sohn der Madame Visconti machte dort Bekanntschaft mit ihr. Madame Visconti glaubte, hoffte, gescheit zu handeln und an den Glück ihres Sohnes zu arbeiten, wenn sie ihren Liebhaber verheiratete. Sie verlässte daher wird Jesu Heirat mit dieser Prinzessin von Bayern. Es gibt aber keinen vernünftigen Vorsatz. Oder sicher nicht das Schicksal lustig macht, sagte der Kaiser. Kaum war die Hereiserung so grand, als der Gatte der Madame Visconti starb und seiner Frau und Freiförder. Diese war sowohl für sie als für Berthier ein wahrer Streik der Verzweiflung. Sie waren unterdrücklich. Berthier kam weinend zum Kaiser, der ihn spazieren schickte. Welches Unglück für ihn, sagte er mit etwas mehr Standhaftigkeit, wäre Madame Visconti seine Gattin geworden. This is really juicy stuff. Napoleon had this chief of staff named Berthier, who was kind of a ridiculous person. And he turned on Napoleon first chance he got. Anyway, it's kind of his right-hand man, Berthier. And he had this married lover named Madame Visconti. She was really spoiled by him, and she was kind of intriguer. So she wanted something. She wanted to have the most she could possibly have, or she wanted something for her son. I can't quite figure out what. And it was floated that Berthier could marry a Princess of Bavaria. And she's like, good, go marry Princess of Bavaria. That'll be good for me. So he marries this Princess of Bavaria. And she stays. This is all over the place. Like, I mean, this is deep stuff. Because her cousin was married to Hortense's brother. So Princess Augusta of Austria, she's like, I can't believe this is her. How could this be? How could my freaking princess cousin be living like this? Anyway, so somehow they got along, and Hortense is like, look, when you got to deal with these royal courts, you got to put up with everything. That's what Hortense says. Horrible. This is horrible. These people live horrible lives. Anyway, so Napoleon's laughing at Berthier like he always does, and saying, like, her husband died right after that. She's like, she could have married him, but she had to scheme. But whatever. Anyway, Napoleon's furious. He was furious. Berthier was living like this. What could he do? And Napoleon couldn't talk anyway. Anyway, thank you so, thank you so much for listening.